People sometimes ask about the rather unusual name, the DuVersity, and it has a history, and the word itself and how it's spelt has a significance which we don't explain in much detail, but is there in the background, and it's important for the history of the organization. It all stems from, well, me being part of a small group of young men, mostly scientists, around Bennett in the 60s, and we were gung-ho on his masterpiece, The Dramatic Universe, which was his attempt to deal with everything into one vision. We thought this was good stuff. We wanted to do that. We thought there's got to be a dramatic university. And one day we'll make this dramatic university, in which we take it up and not just repeat what he's done, but do our own thing and grow and that sort of thing. But as faiths or inertia or whatever had it, it didn't of itself develop. Nobody else came up with the idea in practice about doing it. But it remained with me, and when Bennett died, I took upon myself, first of all, to deal with his last teaching material. Why did I want to do this? Because there were things emerging from it, new things emerging from it, which I wanted to consolidate and put into some form. So this sense of putting into some form which would carry a kind of work into the future. And because God knows where Bennett got it from. In a way, he got it from his own essence, his soul, and got some of it from Gurdjieff, because for me Gurdjieff was an initiator, a starter, an inquiry. So came around to say, well, let's give it a go. And the first thing you do is simply start with a name. Right? But I and some friends have been doing seminars in America, experimenting with the practices we got from Bennett and so on, but not too much on the ideas. You see, I thought there could be a place for the ideas, but the ideas being put into practice, and including elements which Mr. Bennett couldn't do in the time he lived because he wasn't really aware of them. One of his passions, if you like, was higher intelligence. And he stuck his neck out and said, we've got to learn to communicate with higher intelligence. How do we do this? And he felt it would involve science. It wasn't just a religious belief or anything like that. And he did all he could towards that. And I thought this should be furthered. And he had these amazing ideas on time, and I thought those should be furthered. And he had his new style of cosmology. I call it like experimental metaphysics, which he calls systematics. It's like a way of build your own cosmology, if you like, put it all together and this kind of thing. All these elements which would take enormous time to develop and explain. So make a vehicle for this. So we came up with the DuVersity, and it has the advantages. Nobody else has used this word, so it's easy to get it on the web and that sort of thing. But one of the new things which came with the DuVersity was around the essence of his systematic, which was this integration without rejection, this mutuality, synergy, and so on, and moving into a truly non-hierarchical phase, of humanity, but needing to find ways of making it work. You can't just say, well, we'll get rid of authorities and everything will happen. But no. So I became fascinated with dialogue, inspired by my one-time physics professor, David Bohm. And this introduced something which was a practical tool which people could do, and was very simple in its nature, but which embodied the important principles. And what were these? They were, can we get into a situation where people can really be on a level and get rid of hierarchy and superiority? Can we contain this so that something can emerge which couldn't be thought of by any of the people independently? So that was the core of dialogue. Now, the DuVersity has been involved in trying to introduce people to dialogue and wherever they can, partly through fourth way groups for access to them, but not only that, conferences and other situations, any opportunity for bringing this way of working together, because for me and my associates, we felt we had to get these, not just talking about the new paradigm and all that kind of stuff, but finding ways to make it work, to actually build the new world, a tiny fragment of it, by doing it. So not just dreaming and talking about making a new world, but actually doing it. So that's where it's gone on. We're going to take it as far as we can. It may not be very far, but always a sense of, which is in our slogan, diversity creates new kinds of unity. We feel that often in the world people already know the unity, the oneness, which they want to uphold and propagate, and persuade other people to join and conform to. And I feel that we're finding something different. If you get real diversity, primarily of people together, then something new comes out of it, which you can then take on and follow, instead of knowing beforehand the unity you want to attain. And if somebody doesn't conform to that, they get beaten up or excluded. You see, this kind of thing. So even one time thinking of writing a book which will be entitled The Wickedness of Oneness. People are very keen on oneness, but they don't understand the dangers in oneness. So that's the overall impression of the DuVersity. It's a place for ideas, but also a place for the concrete experiences of people. We're collecting the direct things that people want to say about what Goethe called the inner bodies, for example. Just ordinary people talking what it means to them, not as it's defined by leaders or groups or anything like that, because this is a time for people who've just tried just to talk to each other. So I'm probably, this is a short thing, so I'll end with the principles of dialogue, which exemplifies a lot. It has an ultimate goal, which is called Koinonia. And it's a Greek word from the early Christians, and it means or he translated it as impersonal fellowship. And it's very important because true dialogue is very different from being in the family, and even it's so radically different from the family that can be understood and talked about a lot. And it's even historically related to the difference coming with the New Testament from the Old Testament, because the Old Testament was still tribal. The New Testament opens to anybody in the world, any human being. What is it that enables any human being to meet with any other human being? So that's the ideal of Koinonia. But then there's a function in it which is to learn how to talk together. And whenever I present it, I say, well, you probably assume you know how to talk together already. And you're doing it in the pub, in the office, and whatever it is. But I say, to talk together in, it's about 15 people or more, on the level, that is without any kind of I'm in charge or dominating anything like this, will be a revelation. So we go forward looking for opportunities for this, and I myself travel to wherever I can call in and have a conversation, because as some psychologists of the 20th century realized, culture comes out of conversation rather than any kind of plan. So I see, we hope to hand it over to some other people, but these threads, you see, of inquiry, which Bennett epitomized, are being fostered and carried on, and should be constantly surprising, and not what people expected. Okay.
Wonderful. Anything else that you'd like to ask?
Say something about DuVersity publications. How do you see the printed materials interacting with the other activities of the DuVersity?
Matt, that's my other camera.
Okay, all right, yeah. Yeah, there's some actual tangible products involved. I say involved because you can't simply say they belong to the DuVersity, but that this whole thread, and certainly the obvious thing of publications, of constructing books as I have done for some of these major themes. For example, the university started doing conferences on some of these key projects which Bennett had, like, you know, what is time, what is everything, what is, let's say, what is this higher intelligence which many people are keen on? What does it? But that's only one part of it. Is the other thing is finding these processes, and I go back to dialogue again, and now develop ways, patterns of conversation which are subtly different from what ordinarily happens, which lead to different kinds of results and different kinds of mind. It's not understood that if you change the language or the medium in which you work, you actually make an opportunity for changing or revealing mind, or what our awareness is. And you're doing it through giving a way of performing it, a way of enacting it. So there's a methodology which we have, which is part of it. But then, in a very common sense way, we're living in the modern age with multimedia and all the rest of it, are trying to turn towards this way of using film and music. And getting away from any kind, the mode of instruction, more to the way of art and performance, in which people can participate if possible. Because in every field, whatever it is, people can rarely learn anything by sitting in a chair and being told something. This is such an idiotic way of proceeding. Imagine all the damage done to children over the, now sit the little people down on their desks, more or less forbid them to move, and talk to them and get them to fill out documents and tick boxes. It is evil, you know. And I remember a friend of mine in India was quoting a teacher or something, a guru, and saying, well, the guru speaks and the student listens. And I said, this is absolutely nonsense. You can never get anything happening like that. You know? If anything, it should be the other way around. Then you have a true transmission, because the listening is far more powerful than the telling. Telling gets nothing. But we're human beings, we have to do something. So finding ways for people to do things so that it's natural for the learning to come is very important. So we're making tentative steps in that regard. And always optimistic and hoping for things to open, as say in music and theatre, and maybe even the movies, so we can create films about it. But it's still the same thing. It's like these old pictures of some traditions. You say the universe is incomplete, and people came along to play the role. And maybe some other beings will come after us, because I can't believe in the universe which just somehow happens, and it somehow happens we appear, you know, and it's like, well, it's working, it's there, isn't it? And I say, no, it's not even truly there yet. Like that old idea of, you know, a star fulfills itself once its light enters a human eye, and it becomes known. As you know, in relativity is actually a zero interval between the eye and the star. They're immediately present to each other. So this whole attitude towards what people can do and how they can engage with each other is our hope, and what we can actually do is also very limited. But we have a space, and we hope it will invite people to do the same. And so they don't have to believe in anything specifically, but just join the troop, playing their way across this crazy world of ours.